On this program, you'll have the unique opportunity to listen in on a remarkable conversation with 4 inspiring guests, all of whom have been convicted of serious crimes and have spent years in prison. However, while in prison, each got involved in a tremendously successful program called Rehabilitation through the Arts, and it changed their lives then and now. The recidivism rate for RTA alumni is 7% compared to the national average of around 60%. And on this program, they'll share their very personal experiences with our American criminal justice system. This is America and the World is brought to you by Japan, history, hospitality, and advanced technology, sharing tomorrow. The Washington Diplomat, a world of news and perspective. The Sultanate of Oman. The U.S.-China Education Trust and F.Y. Chang Foundation, Julia Chang Block, President. The Rotendaro Family Trust. The Forerunner Foundation, dedicated to forward-thinking public policy. And the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings. I want to be very respectful and very gentle with this question, but I think it's important for the folks to know a little bit about the crime that you were involved in that brought you into the prison system. So anybody can start. Go ahead if
Sure.
I've presented it in a respectful way.
Sure. I lived through my story. So after Iraq, during Iraq, I was experiencing sexual harassment and sexual things of a different nature. But we were under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was in place. And the person who was coming on to me was my superior officer, and she was like 5 ranks above me. There was a powerlessness that came with that. You couldn't really tell anyone, and I was already deteriorating because I had just lost my grandmother. My mother was being hospitalized with a tumor in her head and her ear, and I had a lot. I was going to school and things of that nature. And by the time I got back, that first 90 days, it was pretty much all downhill for me mentally. I had taken on a lot, and I was under a lot of pressure. I never released. I never went on vacation or any R&R and nothing. Mm-hmm. And so I took a plea deal when I got incarcerated. I took a plea deal February 21st, 2010 is the date I will never forget where this incident occurred. I had so much going on, and I took a plea deal for attempted murder because it was less than the assault in the first they were trying to give me. Assault in the first was 10 years. Attempted murder for 13 charges was 8 years. With that plea deal, not being in a mental state where I even knew what was happening to me and no real representation, even though eventually my aunt came through because my grandmother had just passed. She came up with some money and she paid for a lawyer that I found in the hallways of Jefferson County Jail. And I just chose anyone that I could see because I needed help. And my mother was hiding something, and my mother was hiding the fact that she had cancer. So by the time I took the actual plea deal, not having any visitation from the military or anything, my contract would be over in 4 months. We were looking at going to Afghanistan, but I'm sitting in jail on rear detachment, not even really knowing what exactly happened. I took that plea deal, and that plea deal was for 8.5 years for attempted murder with 5 years on post-supervision. And so I found myself, it's not until after the incarceration did I unpack everything that really happened to me, and that I was defenseless, and had I known the things that I know now, I would have chosen differently. I would have taken it to trial. Right. I would have been able to prove myself for what I'm guilty of and the things that I'm not guilty of, which is probably 12 of the 13 charges. And with that, I see the criminal justice system a bit differently when it plays out for African American people, when it plays out for rehabilitation. It's such a you have to have clarity when you make decisions of how much time are you going to be taking for the crime that you're being, they're saying you committed. you need help there. You need a community of people there to tell you or help you, and you really need good representation.
Yes.
And when I took that charge, I would not have taken it if it were up to me today and I was in a clear mental health place. But I found rehabilitation in the process, so I cannot say that I would take anything away from it that was negative, but rather speak the facts of whatever could help us as a whole nation to try to correct those wrongs.
And how long did you end up having to serve time?
I served 6.5 years. I got out on good behavior.
Okay.
So out of the 8 years, I did 6.5 years.
And how long have you been out now?
I've been out 2 years. The sentence is actually paid for. I've done my time, and but I'm still on parole, which is another factor when you come back home that is a hindrance.
We want to talk about that. Jeffrey, can you tell me a little bit about what brought you to prison? I guess that's the question.
I was charged with originally I was charged with murder. However, I took a lesser plea, which was manslaughter in the first degree. I can say that I took that plea. The biggest reason I took it because I was afraid. I was afraid of the numbers that they kept throwing at me constantly. The lawyer that's supposed to have been a representative for me, more than, all right, let's sort this out and see all the dynamics of the case. It was more of, oh, well, they're going to try to give you 25 years, or they're going to try to give you 20 to life, or they're going to try to give you this. I heard that more than anything else. And at the age of 19 years old, 20 years old, I couldn't fathom that. I couldn't think of that. I couldn't imagine even the calendar even existing that long. Because at some point we all thought the world was going to come to an end. Y2K came, we thought it was over. So
You're not that old.
So it was kind of like, you know, I was afraid, you know, and I still haven't come to terms at that point of what I had done, you know, the true impact of my crime. It was, I would say it was like, afterwards when I realized that, yes, I've done this crime, I'm guilty of it, you know, I did take the plea, I'm admitting to the crime. It was still like 18 years for the situation I was in at a young age with a guy that was 2 times my size, a guy that was twice my age. For me to be a child at the age that I was, or a young teen at the age that I was, and put in a position to where I had to defend myself, and it not be taken lightly. It was taken so lightly that, you know, well, you did this and that's it. That's very, it's hurtful. And it's not saying I take nothing away from the seriousness of my crime at all. I'm absolutely guilty of what I did. Do I feel that I should have served as much time as I served? No. And I'm very remorseful for what I've done. You know, I constantly, and part of what I do is because I can't give that life back. So I'm constantly trying to contribute to every life that I can. You know, impact somebody's life in a way that mine was an impact. So they don't have to go through or put someone through what I went through or put a family through.
Absolutely.
It is hard, like, still I battle with that I took someone's life. And I say that I'm still responsible because once I matured and I became educated, it was more, I realized that I had an opportunity to make a different decision. I had an opportunity to walk away. Yes, he was bigger. Yes, he was stronger. Yes, he was older. I was faster.
Let me interrupt for just a second and tell the folks at home, if you're just joining the conversation, I'm not going to make a lot of introductions here because you pick up the thread of, we're talking with four people who are incredibly fascinating in our conversation about growing up, committing a crime, ending up in prison, and we're moving toward a conversation about a program that they were introduced to in the prison system here in the New York area that has had a profound effect on them and many other people. So, but we're just learning a little bit about the backstory, and we warn the folks in the control room that this conversation is important, it's good, and it's going well, and we may just keep on going. So tell me a little bit about just the backstory, and I hope I asked that respectfully about the crime that put you in prison.
Well, I was convicted of manslaughter in the first, and I was given 20 years for actually killing my boyfriend. I would say my ex-boyfriend at the time when I killed him, but he was my boyfriend at one time, and our relationship was very short-lived, 6-month relationship. And it was actually a domestic violence relationship. However, because of the lack of knowledge I had as to what domestic violence was, I did not know that that's what I was supposed to tell the lawyers. And when they asked me, you know, is this a domestic violence? I said no, because I had no idea what that was. And it wasn't until just before my conviction that I learned through research that that was a situation that I was in. And it wasn't until I was incarcerated that I learned more about what my situation was about, what domestic violence was, what it entailed, why it came to be what it was. And unfortunately, I didn't have a lawyer, I didn't have a paid lawyer, because my what is it that you call it? The
Public defender.
Public defender did not have my suppressed statement. Yes, my statement was not suppressed because I trusted the officers that took my statement, thinking that they were going to be honest about what they said. And like Judah, I was not in a mental and emotional state to advocate for myself. And
that seems to be a thread here. Huh?
Yes. And fortunately for me, I did have people to advocate for me, my parents. Unfortunately, they weren't around at the time where I needed them. And to me, it was a situation where the system took advantage of that. So because I didn't have the proper representation, it was, okay, well, whatever she says, we're going to use it against her and twist her words to our satisfaction. And that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't until years after my incarceration that I realized, oh my gosh, I could have done something different. Well, had I known then what I know now, things would have been a lot different, yes. And like Jeff, I am guilty of committing my act. However, the amount of time that was given me, I feel that it was too much, because my victim, unfortunately, was not a very nice man. And he was about 3-4 times my size. He was abusive in a lot of ways. The media portrayed him as this guy who was just the greatest man to the people in the community. Unfortunately, he lived a double life, or maybe even triple life. And unfortunately, I had the disadvantage of being a part of that. And like Jeff, I had to defend myself from his abuse, and being a woman of my stature who's not even 5 feet and trying to deal with a almost 300-pound man, I didn't know how to deal with that. And that was actually part of the reason why they said, well, really, does she deserve 25? Because 25 to life with murder in the second, that's what they were offering me until 3 days before trial, when they finally found the information that my dad had to keep telling them, listen, my daughter keeps saying this, she keeps saying that, why haven't you found the information? So when they finally found it, they said, oh my gosh, we didn't realize this existed. And unfortunately for me, they assumed, because they didn't find the information, that I was lying about everything that I told them. So basically, I was just thrown under the rug until my father came and said, listen, find the information, or else we're just going to have to prolong it, and I'll do what I have to do. And he was in transition from living in New York to moving to Alabama. And had I not been incarcerated, I would have been able to follow him. Unfortunately, I had to stay in New York and deal with the situation that I was in the best way I could. And I had very little knowledge of the penal system. I had very little knowledge of politics. I was actually in college pursuing a degree in biology pre-med nursing. So I didn't watch a lot of TV at CSI, all those other shows. So I really didn't know a lot about how prisons were run or how the streets were run. Even though I grew up, I was also very sheltered. So me going to prison was like a really big thing in my church community, in my home community. It was just like, oh my gosh, the pastor's daughter is in prison. And the prison sentence, I feel, was very unjust for me because all the evidence wasn't presented when it should have been. And there were people that were willing to speak on my behalf. But because I had a public defender who assumed that I was lying because I changed my story once I received new information about what my story entailed, it was at the last minute, okay, we're going to do this to the best of my ability. Instead of giving you 25 to life, we're going to give you 20 years. And I said, well, that's still a lot of time. Now, if I were the person that the media portrayed me to be, I can understand you wanted to give me 20 years. But because all the mitigating circumstances weren't introduced at the time, then I feel that my lack of knowledge was exploited. And I was given the time that I was given because, well, where's my advocates? Where are the people that are going to speak on my behalf? They were non-existent.
Wow.
You really learn a lot after the fact.
After
you don't even know what's happening in the process.
Right.
So when you learn afterwards,
Yep.
you think of all the ways you probably could have defended yourself.
Yes. After.
And or what to ask or what to seek. I don't remember even, I hadn't talked to anyone, so I don't know where they determined anything except for in a psychiatric hospital.
Wow.
Telling my story, because my lawyer definitely looked at me when the judge asked me, are you saying you're taking a Alford plea? And not knowing what that is, he's not going to tell me from the bench. He's not my lawyer. But then they call my lawyer up, and my lawyer comes back and he says, come on, you know you did it. We paid you, and you still hadn't talked to me. I spent 4 months in a psychiatric hospital. I didn't have any representation that was speaking to me to even hear my side of the story. And that is why I wrote my own book.
I just want to add this, and it's important to say this, you know. We all have similar stories. One of the common threads in it is we kind of feel that we shouldn't have got the time that we got. We're not saying that we're not guilty for what we did. And it's important for each one of us, it's important for it to be noted, especially for the viewers, that we're not trying to lessen the impact of our crime.
Right.
We're not trying to sit and say that we are innocent for our crimes.
Right.
All this is uneducated people becoming educated and realizing that they were taken advantage of at some point. The district attorney's job is to bring the truth.
Right.
The truth. But it seems that in the criminal justice system in America, or let me say New York, because this is a criminal justice system I know about, the DA job seems like against all odds, no matter what, prove that you are guilty, even if you didn't do it. Even if there's something that can say that, all right, because of these circumstances, he really shouldn't be charged with this. They will pile on so many charges that the odds are against you to ever find one that was particularly suit you for your situation and how things happen. Mine was written off as I intentionally killed someone. There was no weapon involved. There was no malicious act. This is simply a man, with all respect to his family, anyone that may know me, that may know him. This is simply a bigger guy, a bigger man that was strangled by a chokehold. When it comes to someone trying self-preservation, when it comes to self-preservation, the first opportunity you get to survive, you take it.
Right.
And at the time, because of how I was raised, again, because of how I was raised, this is the way that I learned to survive.
Right.
By fighting. I got you in a person, this man in a position, and I refused to let go out of fear. He's bigger, he's stronger. I did not decide to hold on because I wanted to take his life. I decided to hold on because this is something I learned on wrestling. You know, WWE, WWF. There's something called a chokehold. Where the person, when you see them, and you learn now that wrestling is not real, but when you see the person collapsed. They're not dead. They're just unconscious. So my mind is, I'm going to hold him till he's unconscious. Then I'm going to get away.
The court system changes your intention. If your intention was to protect yourself, because if you did let go, maybe, hopefully, he would still live, and that wasn't the case. And the intention in the courtroom changes. They try to pin the intention of the result onto something of maliciousness or malice, and it could totally be different. In my case, this was the second time the police was involved. I've been calling for help. Like, I called 911 before for being hit. You know, this is a domestic situation with someone I don't want to be in this relationship. The power dynamic is they're 5 ranks above me. I'm already having issues with my superior officers. I have goals now. I want to be a lieutenant. Who can I tell? And then those who know are of lesser rank than that particular person. I've heard several times in different therapeutic situations, being as though we're both vets, and I take nothing from the alleged victim, but there could have been multiple things that this superior officer could have did that could have been good for both of us. Teach me. Show me the ropes of how to make rank. Instead, you're using your power dynamic to make decisions and use abuse. Your background, I don't know. I don't even know you. I'm not interested in you, and I think I have the right to choose who my partner would be. Right. There's also rules involved. It's so complicated, and if you don't have fair representation from the beginning, how can you have justice at the end?
That's right.
We are the people who were in society that was placed into a community of people who were also in society. So then you look and you say, what's first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the person who committed the crime? Because then you go in there, the same crimes are being committed.
Absolutely.
And then you have to ask yourself, well,
it's swept right under the rug.
What's happening? Are we overlooking something in society and we're just cataloging people and warehousing them and not really giving justice from the beginning, because you can't really find it even with your lawyers.
Right.
So just one more thing. Again, I just want to throw this again.
Okay.
This is no one's attempt at saying that we are guilty. We are not guilty.
Right.
This is no one attempt at softening the impact of the crime. This is simply, again, a few individuals that became educated, that matured, and learned that we could have done things differently. And because of we could have, we went through what we went through, and we will, and we are doing things different. We are making better decisions. So again, it's just for people to know that no one is saying that I didn't do this.
We've all been judged already, so I don't think that's even...
Yes, I'll jump in and say
You're a good listener.
Yes. No, but I think out of all 3 of my friends here, I went to jail at the oldest age. I was convicted at the age of 34 for 17 to life for murder in the 2nd degree. A fight gone bad, and it was another WW situation where that I got into a fight with someone, had him in the chokehold, and unfortunately I thought they were unconscious, and they never retrieved, never started breathing again. I took a plea deal immediately because I knew that I had, I felt terrible about what I did. And I wanted this all to go away. I didn't want to go through the trial system. I didn't want the family to have to go through, the pain and agony of coming back and forth to court. My family didn't know what I did until almost a year later. I was so embarrassed about what I did. And it took me a long time to tell them, that they knew that I was in prison, but they never knew what I was in jail for because of what happened between my mother, which didn't play a factor in this, but we do understand, what it's like to have someone murdered. So I did not, I didn't know how to tell them, actually. So it took a while for me to, I was an alcoholic when this happened. I was heavily involved in drugs. When the crime happened, I was under the influence of alcohol and drug substance. So it was like, it was a fight that went terribly wrong. So I take, I take responsibility for what I did. I just didn't want their family or my family to have to go through the pain of going back and forth to court. Something that my other 2 friends had mentioned earlier that, has always stuck with me throughout this whole criminal justice system is that they say that, you will be judged by a jury of your peers.
Right. Right.
They're not our peers. Most juries are not your peers. When you look, we're peers.
Right.
Yeah.
All of us are peers here, except for you, because you never went through the criminal justice system. But
Well, arrested twice.
oh, good for you. Yeah, now you are a peer. No. So that's good. But,
But it was a very short.
Hopefully with the traffic
Thank
ticket or
God.
something.
Right.
No, it was twice. Next time on This Is America and the World, we'll dive into the highly successful Rehabilitation Through the Arts program and learn how our guests' lives were touched in very human and positive ways. For information about This Is America and the World, visit our website, thisisamerica.net, or our YouTube channel, This Is America TV, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. This Is America and the World is brought to you by Japan, history, hospitality, and advanced technology, sharing tomorrow. The Washington Diplomat, a world of news and perspective. The Sultanate of Oman. The U.S.-China Education Trust and F.Y. Chang Foundation, Julia Chang Block, President. The Rotendaro Family Trust. The Forerunner Foundation, dedicated to forward-thinking public policy. And the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings.